I was talking to my husband, and we were talking about things that we would want to ask God when we got to see God face to face. And one of my reflections was, actually, I think when I see God face to face, the questions will all melt away.
I think you're right.
But we don't get to see God face to face in this life. There's this lovely verse in the Bible, and the King James translation of it talks about how now we see through a glass darkly, but then we shall see face to face. Now we know in part, then we will know fully and be fully known. And I really love that. The idea of us kind of looking through a glass darkly, kind of, it makes me think of a mirror that's sort of been aged, and so we can't really see the image all that clearly, you know, so almost we're looking at God through fog in our human existence. But when we get to see God face to face, you know, we'll see everything. We'll see God in all God's godness, and maybe our questions won't seem so important anymore, because it will be about meeting a person.
I think that's great, because sometimes my faith seems very strong, and I think almost like I've got no doubts today at all. Half an hour later, things might have changed, or as a phone call or something's turned up, and then life seems very difficult again. And I think that is that we may have a relationship with God, but it's not going to be a perfect relationship with God. We're not going to understand, and that's why we have to come back to saying, okay, enough. I just got to trust you. I don't know. I don't like it. I'm quite cross about it. But knowing you as I do, I know you've got it sorted. And I don't know why people have to go through certain things, and why some things seem so unfair, and why some people just seem to breeze through life. Yeah, not a big deal. They do what they want and seem to get away with all kinds of stuff. And other people who seem really nice people just go from one difficulty to another.
There's a huge quality in our world, isn't there? You know, because the reality is that those of us living in the global north, not all people, but a lot of us, and those who enjoy relative wealth compared to the rest of the world, we're kind of used to being in control of our lives to a large extent. We, you know, if we get sick, we can go see a doctor. If we lose our job, we might be lucky enough to have savings, or we can go find another job. You know, we're used to being able to solve our own problems, and so the pandemic has kind of made us come face to face with our own weakness, our own vulnerability. But the reality is there are, you know, many people living in our world who are already living very precarious lives. And of course, it's all got even more unfair now, hasn't it? Because, you know, we've got a great vaccine program in the UK, and I'm really delighted about that. But the reality is there are many countries that just don't have the resources to make that happen at the same speed. And so there's, you know, the reality is, you know, many of us will recover much more quickly than others. So there's that unfairness between individuals, but also between different parts of the world. And I kind of wonder if there's a challenge there. You know, I've heard it said, you probably heard it too, that you know, when I see God face to face, I'll ask God, why did you let that happen? Why didn't you do anything about it? And what I'm worried is that God will ask me the same question.
Yeah, I have those same fears, I suppose, to a certain extent. I think all the resources which I have available, for the future and all the rest of it, and all the time I have to do whatever I want to do most of the time. But I think you're right. And those verses in the Bible, when Jesus says, you know, you come to me and you'll say, I'll say, I never knew you, all those kind of things. And I just think, goodness me, that's actually quite scary, and challenging me to think about, well, how well do I know God, really? I claim that I'm a Jesus follower and the rest of it, and I trust him, but how well do I really know him? And I guess many people might have those same kind of questions. And of course, Jesus points to us actually looking after other people, visiting people in prison, whatever prison might be. It may not be put away because they've done something wrong, but it could be prison of poverty, or prison of illness, or prison of no food, or what it might be. And maybe we can do something to help that.
And that passage you you quoted about Jesus saying, I never knew you. I remember preaching on that passage once and doing a lot of reading about it, and I found it incredibly challenging. So Jesus tells the story in Matthew 7 of the foolish man who built his house on sand, and the wise man who built his house on rock. And Christians often, quote that story and say, oh, and the rock is Jesus. We need to build our lives on Jesus. But actually what Jesus says is those who hear my words and obey them are like a wise man who built his house on rock. And so there's it's about knowing God, but it's also about doing justice, doing the things Jesus told us to do. And as you quite rightly say, Andy, he said, visit those in prison, look after those who are sick, clothe the naked, feed the hungry, and so on. Yeah, I'm really challenged by that too.